So I don't know if you saw, but Ford has a Ford Escape,
Yes, I've heard.
which is, I don't know if it's actually one of their best selling cars or not. But the 2021 model year, they are updating with a new 12-inch display,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
and it's going to be using the same, what is it called, Force Sync technology
Mm-hmm.
and UI as the Mach-E.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
It's cool.
It's cool.
It's you know, technology is becoming a bigger part in the purchasing decision of any cars, as I've written 50,000 times at this point. And if you went out of your way to create a brand new UI and order brand new displays, why would you limit it to one car? Might as well spread the wealth over. You know, the car buyer is becoming more technologically inclined. So why not put a 12-inch display in your car? I mean, every single concept car we see has at least two big screens, one behind the steering wheel and one in the center console, if not more. So it seems like the proper evolution of the car.
So you think massive displays are the future of the auto world?
Yes. I mean, I don't think I've seen a single car announced uh, that does not have a giant screen in the center, like at all. Every
Are
single
you
car.
for it?
Uh, I like big screens, obviously, but two two caveats to it is that I feel that some buttons need to be physical if you really want to say that you're safety minded and you want the driver to keep their eyes on the road. Obviously, it's much easier to find something that's sticking out of the dashboard and gives you
Like
some
what?
sort
What button would you want to remain physical?
like, well, now that I think about it, I was gonna say like the volume wheels, but that's now transplanted onto the steering wheel. But maybe like the AC controls. Obviously, I think the only button that
Do you think people still fiddle around with ACs now that most new cars have auto modes? I haven't fiddled around with my AC in years.
yeah, but you got. I don't know. I feel like every time we go in your car, we're fiddling with the AC, trying to get that
You kind of
cool air.
just you kind of just have to set the temperature for that time of day, and then that's it. Let it do its thing. You don't have to start messing around with the speeds.
Well, it's. I mean, you're probably right. It's just a sentiment that I see, and it's probably not
You
the.
like knobs? Just
I
say it.
like knobs. I
You're a
mean,
knobhead.
I'm a knob head, right? I like nice machined tactile buttons as a personal preference, and I can use it as a convenient excuse by saying that I can find controls very easily. Um, so yeah. But secondly, with how quickly technology advances, um, displays become a very it can become very dated in only a few years because I mean before you had your upgrade to your MCU, right? We were fiddling around with MCU 1 and that was painful already 2 years after you got the car, and then you got the new MCU and it was buttery smooth. And then I'm sure within another 3 or 4 years that experience is going to look crappy again. I remember I don't know if it's true 100%. I'm not gonna say this is a direct quote, but I remember Doug DeMuro doing a review of either Bugatti. I'm pretty sure it was the Bugatti, the newest one, and the Bugatti doesn't have a giant screen in the center of it at all. And if I remember correctly, Doug said that Bugatti didn't put any sort of like big technology, big tech, no screens in the center of it because that's the quickest thing that dates a car. Buttons aren't really going to date a car. You've been having the same buttons for 100 years, but
I feel like
you have a
buttons will
laggy
date a car.
interface. It's going to become almost unusable in 3 to 4 years because everyone's used to what their phone does, and the performance that you can find in a car is basically never going to be one to one with the smoothness that you have in your phone or on your laptop or whatever. So it
Well, I
becomes a very
feel that performance and speed gets laggy not because new tech gets faster and then it compares horribly with prior techs. Like, yes, that exists, but for the most part, it gets slower and slower because of continuous updates, continuous additions to the product.
uh,
The Model S on MCU1 running V9 was not as laggy as running V10. Nowhere near as laggy.
yeah, but still, I mean, whenever one of us has to go back to their old phone to retrieve something or whatever, even if that phone's only 2 to 3 years old, we're already going back to it's like, whoa, damn, I use this screen,
Yeah,
this.
but won't having knobs themselves be an indication of that when every other car has screens?
Well, let me just say that excuse with Bugatti only works because it's a Bugatti, and I don't really think many people are gonna be too concentrated on what is in the center console. They're gonna be worried about everything else. So in a regular consumer car, I guess that doesn't really hold much merit. But you know, I can use a, a pencil from 50 years ago and it's going to work just as fine as it did 50 years ago. But if you ask me to use the first iPhone or the second iPhone or the third iPhone or the fourth iPhone, I'm gonna lose my mind because it's become so dated so quickly.
I feel like screens and UI have exponentially gotten faster, but we've kind of stalled off. If an iPhone 1, yeah, that's pretty slow, but if I gave you a 2-year-old iPhone running that original OS compared
Yeah,
to today's iPhone running the newest OS, probably not that noticeable.
it's becoming less noticeable, but I mean, I have the Galaxy S10 right now. My last one was the S3. I had to go back to the S3, so that was only 3 years ago. And even then, at the time, I thought the S3 was a great phone. You know, super nice screen, the processor, was, you know, everything was fast. But I picked up the S7 because I had to pull something off of it, and I'm like, whoa, this is this looks like trash now because I got so used to the bright full body display of my current phone. But at the time that I had it for 3 long years, happily, I was like, yo, this works well enough. But as soon as I get that next piece of technology, everything before it quickly deteriorates in my eyes and in most people's eyes, I feel.
How important are interface updates in that regard? For example, version 9 on MCU1 looks dated today, but when they updated it to version 10,
Mm-hmm.
did the improvement in interface make up for the lack of speed?
I think so. Um, I think personally V9, um, like designs for the icons and everything was already dated the day they put it out. Like those gradient buttons and everything screamed like 2006 2007 design when everything was gradient and this flat style of design language didn't exist back then. So I feel like even when people were using it, the design was outdated already. And it the screen takes up a huge, especially in the Model S, the screen takes up a huge portion of the car. So what's on it is does have an effect on when someone looks in the interior. If whatever's on the screen looks booty, no one, it's gonna have a little bit of effect on them. It's like, ugh, I got to use that.
Which leads to a point. If, yeah, sure, the knobs will date a car
Mm-hmm.
and it'll never feel old, but with an interface, with a good display, an
Mm-hmm.
update can make it feel new again. Your knobs will never feel new again. You get
True.
in a Tesla with OTA, and then one day you have Hulu capabilities.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat.
No,
Your
it's
knobs can't
it's.
do that.
I'm I'm fully prepared to say I'm in the minority. I like nice machined things, right? I have this mechanical pencil sitting on my desk that's like $35 just because it's a nice metal, everything's sharp and fit and finish is good. But I tell someone I have a $35 pencil, they're gonna look at me like I'm crazy. Just get a Ticonderoga pencil or take notes on your phone, Grandpa. But I sat in the new 911 Porsche, and they have a display too. Obviously, not as big as anything in like the Model 3 or the Model S, but below it they have like these really nice tactile metal buttons. They're kind of reminiscent of the buttons you see on the cockpit of a 747 up top. They have a good clickiness to them, right? I have a mechanical keyboard. I like the clickiness of it, so I'm fully prepared to say that I'm in the minority of those people, but those people do exist. To your point, yeah, updates work, but as long as whatever processing unit they decide to put in the car will be able to keep will be able to run it. Obviously, there's going to be a point where they'll keep loading the interface with so much stuff that whatever processor they put into the car 5 years ago isn't going to be able to run it, and then you're going to have to either suffer with a laggy experience or not be able to have the newest features, or having to go through with a complete replacement of the compute unit if the company even allows for such a thing. So that's how I feel about that.
As much as a knobhead that you are,
Mm-hmm,
you're
mm-hmm.
also hypocritical in the fact that you are a fan of UI and you're a fan of the Mach E UI. So let's
Yeah.
talk about that. How important is UI in a car? Is it a make or break deal for you when you're buying your
Oh
next
no,
car in, let's
no.
say, 8 years from now?
No. Obviously, it's not a make or break. As if you've read my article, obviously, I do
But there
write it in a
for
sense where I put a lot of importance to the UI, and it's something that I feel needs to be considered when building a car because the screens are going to get much bigger and bigger, and your traditional center console is going to be basically gone in the future and going to be replaced by a big screen. So whatever's on that big screen, taking up like a quarter of the front view of the interior, it should look nice because people are going to be looking at it and interacting with it. And if they want to change the aircon, the radio, the navigation, they're going to have to interact with it, and it's going to be in your benefit to not have have something that's enjoyable to look at and use.
a lot of people, UI is the make or break in a purchase. You have a lot of people, for example, with iPhones versus Android. Their only issue with either is the UI.
Yeah,
So
but
in this coming future where tech eventually stalls off. Like, yeah, Tesla's in the lead right now in terms of everything, but eventually they'll stall off and it allows everyone to catch up. We saw it with cell phones, we saw it with regular cars, we'll see it again with EVs, even if it takes 50, 60 years.
mhm.
Eventually, once everyone's near the same pace and everyone has the same tech, the UI will be the new car design. Right now, people will buy a car that looks better. A lot of people will now take into consideration UI since displays are becoming, like you said, a significant portion of vehicle interiors. So on UI alone, what car are you buying today?
On UI alone,
On UI alone,
I don't know. Nothing's really wowing me, honestly.
you don't like the Mach-E's in
I
UI?
do like the Mach-E, but it's kind of like I like it because everything else to me is kind of eh. I mean, admittedly, I'm very tough on car UIs because I've been experiencing them since the infotainment system of cars was starting to be put into cars. So I was there with the original iterations of BMW's iDrive and Lexus's stuff, and it was just so painful and slow and uninspired, especially
And it
compared
still
to
is.
yeah, and especially compared to like the gap between how smooth an experience your smartphone is and whatever touchscreens the cars had. Like 10 years ago, the gap was much bigger. Now, obviously, smartphones are still a smoother experience, but the gap in usability has started to kind of come in. So it's not as jarring to move from your phone to your car's infotainment system. But I have very bad like memories with it, and so I I don't know. It's one of those things where, as humans, things get dull very quickly, and I have no issues with like what Tesla has. I think it's pretty usable, but we've been looking at it for years now, and that's just a first world problem, I guess, where your UI isn't being updated all the time, and even though it's perfectly usable, you kind of want something new to look at. So, and in essence, that's part of the reason why I like the Ford Mach-E's UIs, because it looks more fresh compared to what everything else has. Porsches and Audis are kind of like clinical, little corporate, not really that much soul in them, in my opinion. I mean, they just get the job done, but there's nothing much to look at in their regards.
In your scale of ranking a vehicle, what
Mm-hmm.
weighs more, design or UI?
Oh, I
Like
feel
the
this.
general car's design.
At this point, I feel the general car's design is much more
Now
important.
think, let's say 10 years in the future where everyone does have that minimum 12-inch display.
Yeah.
Is it still gonna weigh as much?
I mean, I hate having to repeat this, but you know me. I like cars in general. So I think forever, I'm going to weigh the exterior design of a car much more than the UI. Unless we start to live in an area, unless we start to live in a time where all the cars look the same, like if we hit smartphones for all intents and purposes basically all look alike at this point. Square,
Could that
big
be
ass.
coming?
I
Could that be the
I
direction we're
hope
heading
not.
now that we are
I
heading towards an interface focused
I
interior
I hope not.
and
I
we know
hope
people have this huge input into wanting the better interface? Could the future of cars be less thought into exterior and more thought into display, interior, into UI, into
I hope
OTA, into everything else involved there?
I hope we all don't start to eventually just drive all the same homogeneous blobs of cars in the future. And I don't think, because your first impressions of a car all tend to be the outside of it. When you see a new car, you're always seeing the outside of it. When you drive by a dealership, you're going to see the outside of the car. So that's the first impression. If we all drive the same beans of cars, I feel like, imagine having to compare 10 different cars that you want to buy, but you got to go inside every single one of them just to even see the differences between them. I don't feel like that will ever be the case, unless I don't even know what kind of world event, legislation, action, or whatever would have to push the auto industry into such a future where everyone's going to be driving the same looking cars and the only differentiating factor is going to be what's on the inside. That just, I don't know. I doubt that's ever going to be the
Not
case.
necessarily every car is going to look exactly the same, but less input will be used there. Less
I
resources, less why add the spoilers if they don't really matter, if people are now more focused on interior displays. Do you
I
think people will be more focused on interior displays?
I feel like people that aren't too heavy into cars, and
Which is the majority?
I don't know about the majority. I mean,
Do you
maybe
think the
Tesla should.
majority of people in the world prefer cars or are into cars? I think the majority of
No,
car buyers
okay.
couldn't care any less.
Okay, but when you say majority, you make it seem like 90% of people that buy cars don't like cars. I mean, that seems like.
I would argue that that's still factually
Okay,
statistically
well,
correct.
we can have that discussion later on.
Have you seen how many Toyotas are sold?
Yeah, because they're cheap and reliable.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean you don't like cars. You appreciate a reliable car, and it's not
So
like
there's
It's
something that weighs
it.
more than looks. Reliability.
Oh, oh,
Reliability weighs more than looks. Will
oh. Are
reliability
you?
always weigh more than interface? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Performance is something that people will weigh heavily as well.
Yeah.
A lot of people will buy the better performance car versus the better looking car,
Correct.
but that doesn't. It's not 100% of the case.
That's true.
Most people will do that backwards.
Yeah.
So interface will be this new like category of consideration. This new section of the pros and cons list.
I, I mean, if we ever make it to that dream future where there's no steering wheel and everything's like a hologram surrounding the entirety of your seat, then yeah, it's gonna become.
The
It's
Lycan
gonna.
Hypersport had a hologram display.
Yeah, but yeah, but I'm talking about real cars. Um, Um, I'm talking about those like stuff that like Mercedes and Rolls are saying like this is going to be our car in 2040, where it's like you're in a
What was
big
that?
recliner.
What was that Nissan that had the entire display across the dash? It was a concept that had a koi pond.
That was the concept for the Aria.
That was awesome. I'd love to
Um,
see something like that.
I mean, you can go pick up the Biden M Byte with its 43-inch
Yeah.
screen that basically
Even
takes up the
Porsche has like
entire.
what, 6 screens?
Too many screens.
It's
It's
not even
screens.
we're not even talking about one interface at this point. We're talking about just a screen, a display focused interior.
Sub
Porsche Taycan has
interfaces.
the
Yeah.
one display on the back. What does it have? One display on the back of both seats as well. You have the center display, you have the HUD, you have there's a passenger display.
There's the screen underneath the main screen in the center.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, but
Do you think more
definitely
screens is better?
no.
Because you said you'd like quick access to things. Is having like, let's say, a separate screen dedicated for air conditioning, so you don't have to go through, mess around with settings, mess around with buttons. It's just already there.
I
Is that
feel
better?
like that's man, what's the word? That's just too much and needless. I feel like if you can accomplish everything you need in one screen, just to do that, you don't need 50,000 sub screens going around everywhere. Um, so yeah, no, I'm not. It's a good marketing ploy, I guess, to say yeah, we have like 8 screens in our car. It's good for marketing, but in regards to usability, I don't even know how many of those 8 screens are going to be used. As long
Are
as you
you
have.
are you gonna buy a car because it has 8 screens?
No, I'm not going to buy a car because it has eight
That's
screens.
like
I still.
the Ford Explorer that has like 16 cup holders.
Yeah, we're gonna move on to the shaving marketing, where we had 4 blades, then we had 5 blades, then we had 6 blades. I don't even know how many blades we have on razors anymore, but it's going to be the future of car commercials.
It's gonna be like the phone cameras. We're at three
Yeah,
cameras now on the iPhone. It's crazy.
yeah,
Just add more to look cool.
exactly. Are you even going to use that fourth ultra wide zoom camera? Nope, but it's there.
But it looks cool.
You can say you got 4 cameras. How many you got, Scott? Two?
But we're in agreement that the future is large displays, potentially more than one display,
Mm-hmm.
getting rid of the majority of knobs. I do think that there will be a lot of cars that do keep some knobs.
Yeah.
Mechanics like let's say seat adjustments will probably remain.
I feel like the hazard lights have to be physical.
Yeah, the emergency light has to be a physical button, at least in this country.
So that's
But
those are
clearly, all of those regulations are changing because everyone's trying to get digital side cameras and all that.
yeah.
Mirrors, I mean.
Oh yeah, we can't forget about the screens for those things. You're gonna have to add
Yeah,
those.
on top of that.
So
It's crazy.
you're gonna be baking in a in screens in the future. Gonna get a suntan from all the pixels pointing at you. But yeah, that's just the way it is. Once the screens hit a plateau, then we're gonna move on to holograms.
See, I was under the impression that Ford was making the Mach-E with their newest interface as a benefit and as an attempt to convert people into electric cars.
Mm-hmm.
But now they have it on the Escape, so
I mean,
I'm pretty certain the majority of the 2021 model year Fords will have massive displays. For sure, if not by 2022.
that's just how it is. Can't be having those little dinky 7-inch screens anymore. And your gauge cluster better not be analog anymore. Better be digital. So yeah, UI is important. I don't think it's the main. I hope it's not the main purchasing factor today for anyone. I hope no one's trying to pick their car based on how cool the screen looks. But hey, I mean, that's how you decide, and do you?
It's not
But
really
it's
much features you can add with cool UI. Like, yeah, you can implement video in video games, but apart from that, it's the same exact stuff.
yeah,
It just looks cooler.